Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Howdy beans, and welcome back to a very merry, obscure Christmas. Hope you're doing well, hope you're all good. I'm your host Luke, the Jolly Bean, and you're listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast. I've got a really fun one for you this week. Following on from last week's episode where I talked about I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus, this is the second week of Obscure Christmas. I'll get into what all that means in a minute if anybody is joining me in this episode. But before we do that, I want to do a bit of housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So make sure that you follow me on Twitter, or now known as X, at nerdstalgic_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And finally, if you listen to this on Spotify on your mobile phone, don't forget to give me a follow and leave a 5-star rating on the podcast. So today we're going to be carrying on my obscure Christmas. For anybody who doesn't know what that means, so obscure means anything that's been undiscovered or not very known about. So today I'm going to be looking at Unaccompanied Minors from 2006. I'll be completely honest. When I decided to do this movie, I remembered the movie in my mind, but I didn't know the name of it. So I Googled it, and after a while, found this movie. It's got the weirdest name ever, Unaccompanied Minors. And I was just like, can I talk about this movie? Because it sounds dodgy. But it's a Christmas movie, I assure you. It's from 2006. It's just one of those ones that it's like it's got an unfortunate name, but it is what it is. So anybody who isn't aware, this is week 2 of December. So this is dedicated to movies from my childhood that nobody talks about, which is part of my obscure Christmas. So what I've decided to do is basically for the first 2 weeks of Christmas, I want to talk about movies that I remember from my childhood, but nobody's really talking about. You don't see reviews about them. You don't see them on TV. You don't even hear anybody talk about them. When they talk about like Christmas movies they remember from their childhood, it's always the standards, always the classics like The Grinch, Jack Frost, and the Santa Claus the movie, and things like that. But it's never these sort of movies where you think, well, I remember that movie. Why does nobody else remember it? So I decided to do a bit of an obscure Christmas for the first 2 weeks of December, culminating in this movie. Obviously, last week was I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus. So if you haven't listened to the episode, please do give that a listen. I had a lot of fun with it. Again, rose-tinted glasses, it wasn't as good as I remember it being, but it's still not bad. And there were parts that really surprised me, but again, I'll leave them for the review. Still can't believe they got away with one thing. Well, actually 2 things in that movie. But again, if you want to find out what they are, you've got to give it a listen. I'm not going to give you all the secrets here. So today we're going to be looking at Unaccompanied Minors from 2006. As for the synopsis, Spencer and his little sister, Kathleen, are flying to Pennsylvania to be with their dad for Christmas. During a layover, a blizzard moves in and cancels all flights out of Hanover International Airport. They must stay in a basement room with the other unaccompanied minors. Spencer and 4 others, a chubby boy, that's what it says on IMDb, that's not me being mean, a chubby boy, a non-stop talker, a surly girl, and a rich kid go AWOL and get in trouble with Mr. Porter, the Christmas-hating airport supervisor. They spend the night evading and enduring his punishments, discovering all sorts of things in back rooms, making sure Catherine gets her visit with Santa, and finding a new kind of family amongst themselves. So from what I remember about this movie, is that I remember it being very much like Breakfast Club meets, kind of like, I'll say Breakfast Club meets Home Alone, but obviously not as deep as Breakfast Club, and obviously not as classic as Home Alone. From my memories of it, was that I remember seeing this film and just finding it really cool. Because again, if anybody's ever been to an airport, has anybody ever flew anywhere, you know how fun airports are. Obviously, as you get older, they kind of lose their sort of mysticism. But when you're a kid, the idea of an airport and planes and things like that, especially me, fascinated me. So to watch a movie where the kids had basically free roam of the whole airport. They could go anywhere. They could go into the back rooms. They could go for, again, it sounds bad, but they could go for people's luggage and see what people have got in their luggage and that sort of thing, which as an adult, we all know you don't really want to do that because we don't know what other adults have in their luggage. But as a kid, you didn't care. It was wonderful. It was interesting. It was just really, really cool. And obviously watching it again, as an adult, which I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember watching it a good few years ago because it was on TV, like on the rare occasion. That I remember, like, this feels very Breakfast Clubby. It feels very much the fact of you've got a bunch of kids that have been put together. They're the kind of kids that would never hang out. They would never talk to each other. You would never see these kids together at all. But they've been put together through a certain situation and they grow friendships. They get to know each other. You realize that the rich girl isn't as rich and sort of prim and proper as you think. And same with the talkative one and blah, blah, blah. And I really thought it was good. So I just thought, you know what? I want to talk about it this year because it's a film that nobody ever seems to talk about. And it's a bit of a shame. So yeah. As for the cast, so you've got Dylan Christopher as Spencer Davenport, great name. Tyler James Williams as Charlie Goldfinch. Anybody who doesn't know Tyler James Williams, he played Chris, and everybody hates Chris. To give an idea who that is, Gia Magenta, great name, plays Grace Conrad. Quinn Shepard plays Donna Malone, another great name. Lewis Black as Oliver Porter. Wilma Varamma as Zach Van Bock, Brett Kelly as Timothy Beef Wellington. Brett Kelly, he was in, I think it was Bad Grandpa. No, not Bad Grandpa. Bad Santa. Sorry, he was the big kid in that movie. He still pretty much looks the same now. If you look at a picture of him now to when he was a kid, he looks exactly the same. He has not aged a day. Wow, sorry. We've also got Pagnant Brewster, as Vivian Davenport, and Rob Corduroy as Sam Davenport. And that's your cast. There's a few more in there as well. So you got Mindy Kaling as restaurant hostess, BJ Novak as the desk attendant, Rob Rickle as head guard Hoffman. So there are notable actors in it. It is a stacked cast. You watch this movie and you would recognize everybody in it, whether from your childhood or from like watching older films. So there is a known cast, and it's one of those where you can tell that there's a big cast in it. It's a big production. It feels a lot more sort of money went into it than Awesome Mommy Kissing Santa Claus, but it's still one of them films of like, I wonder why it's a film that I remember so fondly, but other people don't. And again, that's the whole point of this sort of series. As for production, again, like the last movie, it's really hard to find any sort of production and how these movies are made. I don't know what it is. It is generally like these movies just appeared one day, and in a way they did when I was younger, when I didn't know anything about how movies are made. It was literally like movies just appeared and you went to go see them. Obviously we know that's not true. We know there's a whole production team behind them, but when you look at these older films, especially these obscure ones, and you look for sort of any sort of production, and it's just like, oh, it was shot here and it was shot there and that was about it. And one thing I found interesting was a weird connection to the last movie, was that this movie was shot both in Salt Lake City and in Scotland. The bit that gets me is the fact of it was shot in Utah. That's 2 Christmas movies now that were shot in Utah. Why? And I think Jack Frost was shot in Utah as well. Like if the reason as to why is because it's got mountains and it's quite snowy and it looks very Christmassy, then I completely understand it. But is all Christmas sort of films shot in Utah? Is that just the standard? It was like, look, you got hills, yeah, it's snowy, it looks good at Christmas, you've got the pines, that's where we're shooting. More than likely. But I just find it like, if I had a nickel for every time I got that, I'd have 2 nickels, which is not a lot, but it's weird it's happened twice. To bring that quote up that I've quoted all over Halloween, we're going to bring it back here at Christmas. But yeah, so that's all I have to say. To be honest, there's not really much more to say other than I'm going to go off and give this movie a watch. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about this film. So I'll see you all in a second, right after this jingle. And welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed my Hallmark free use jingle there. I've just finished watching this movie, and my first impressions are I really, really enjoyed it. There was a lot of nostalgia there. There was a lot of giggles. There was a lot of laughs. It is a very pretty decent sort of festive Christmas movie. I was right in the introduction. It does feel like The Breakfast Club, not as deep as The Breakfast Club. So the reason why that movie is so beloved and such a cult classic is because the characters are very human. The characters have flaws. You can connect to a lot of the characters. You can connect to all of them, to be honest, especially if you watch it as a kid. And then as you grow up, you'll find yourself connecting to them all. And it's a very incredible movie. And obviously, we're not here to talk about Breakfast Club, but if you've seen it, then you know just how good that movie is. This film, it's not as deep as Breakfast Club. The characters have flaws, but it's very much like, for example, in the Breakfast Club, the characters go that deep, straight to the heart of the characters, and you feel a connection, very heartfelt connection. In this, the characters go skin deep, but probably just to the muscle, not all the way to the bone, without being too grotesque. But you still find a way to really emote and care about these characters. And as they have their little moments of getting to know each other, you get to know them. And it is very much organic. None of it is forced. It's very clever idea how they do it. Obviously, I'll break it down when it gets to the story, but it's a very clever idea of how they did it. And I did really enjoy it. Also, it does remind me of Home Alone as well, where you have the kids running away from the airport security guards and the airport manager and getting up into all sort of hijinks. And like I said in the introduction, again, as an adult, we all kind of want to do it. Yeah, we wanted to do it as a kid, but we all wanted to go onto the baggage claim, sit on it, and then just ride it. Like we all saw Toy Story 2. Okay, we all saw what happens when you go into the baggage claim and you've got all them slides. As an adult at 26 years old, if someone said to me, you could do that and there'd be no consequences and there'd be no way of breaking anything or death, then I would definitely do it. Because again, I've seen a lot. I've seen movies and obviously behind the scenes sort of stuff, and they are very industrial. And again, a lot of damage could be done to a person. But wouldn't it be fun just to slide around those things for a bit? And obviously, the kids get to do that in this movie. But the point I'm getting to with this is the fact of the airport when you're young is a very magical place. And I've never been to the airport at Christmas, but I would imagine it being very magical and it being very festive. It is still very full of wonder. So, and not as that, putting them in an airport where they're all snowed down is a very clever way of getting the kids to interact and to have a reason for them being there. But again, we'll get to that in a minute. But I did really, really enjoy it. I know it's a bit early days to say it because again, I've only just started to actually talk about the movie. But I don't think this is a film that deserves to be forgotten. Like, granted, it's not always on TV, so it's not going to be a film that you can guarantee to see every Christmas or that you can catch just on the whim on TV. It's probably one you'd have to go look for. But if you do manage to get lucky enough and it to be on TV, then I would recommend to sit down and watch it over Christmas or over the holiday period with your kids, or even as an adult. I think you'd probably get some enjoyment out of it. Yes, it is not a Christmas classic, but it has elements of other movies and other Christmas films, and it is enjoyable and it's a lot of fun. So I know this sounds like my overall thoughts, but generally, first impressions going in, it's a lot of fun, and it is as good as I remember it being. So that should be enough. But we'll get into it and we'll break it down and we'll give a lot more sort of bang for your buck. As for the story, so what I like about this movie is how it really sets up the characters. So instead of just like putting them in an airport and then having the characters meet, it begins with actually being like a big animated map of the United States, sorry. And then you go to each sort of moment and you get to see the kids. And then you've got Charlie. He's with his dad. He sees Santa and he faints. His dad faints as well. And that sets up that he's a very sort of shy, timid he follows the rules sort of kid, but a wimpy sort of kid, basically. And then you have Spencer and his sister, and that she wants to see Santa, but she's also terrified of seeing Santa. So he's trying to be a big brother, but he's also a dork. So that sets up that. You've got Grace. She is the rich kid who, again, very much at the beginning, obviously, there's a lot more to the characters than this, but she's the very preppy sort of, rich, posh kid who doesn't really talk to anybody else who's not at her status or her level. And then you got Donna, who straight away, she's the sort of rough and tough, don't touch me, don't look at me sort of kid. Like, you look at me wrong, I'm going to box you in the face. That sort of thing, the tough girl. and it kind of gives you sort of straight away who they are as characters, what you're in for. Then it jumps to the airport. They fly to the airport. They get there. They get snowed in. All the unattended minors get sent to this one room where all the other unattended minor kids are. And they all slowly, once after another, start to meet each other. And this is kind of where it gets into the Breakfast Club sort of feeling. And I like it for that. It's very organic. It's very sort of like, this is probably what would happen. Again, I never traveled unaccompanied when I was younger. You only ever hear about it happening in America. I'm sure it happens here in the UK and other parts of the world, but it's always America that seems to have the unattended flyers, mainly because I would imagine of how big the states are and how long distance people live from each other. That I don't think people realize actually how big the United States is, that how difficult it would be to say, like, go from like New York to, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think somewhere far away. Is it Utah far away from New York? I don't really know. But basically, if you was to travel, it would take too long to obviously drive or get a train, so you would have to fly. It's the only way you'd be able to do it. So maybe that is as to why. But anyway, enough of my rambling. So they meet each other. It's very organic. And again, you learn more about the characters. You learn more about Charlie. You learn more about Spencer and about Grace and Donna. And then you get to meet Beef, which is just funny. So he's the guy, Brett Kelly, the guy that was in Bad Santa and all that, who basically still looks the exact same now as he did back then. He is a very weird character. I think he's paid for laughs. He's very much of like, if you've watched Gone in 60 Seconds, which is, I know, is a weird parallel, but if you've seen Gone in 60 Seconds, there's an actor, I can't remember his name. His name's escaping me now, but he was an English footballer. He was a bit of a hard man, and I'm kicking myself for not remembering his name. And he plays a guy called the Sphinx, and he doesn't talk. He just stands there, right? And it's very much of this character Beef. Like, he talks every now and then, but like he's very much, he just kind of just stands there, and he's just like this big sort of abominable snowman sort of character. Very weird sort of character, but he's there, but you don't see much of him too much. He's having his own little sort of adventure off on his own, trying to find a Christmas tree. It is a weird. I'm not really like, that's the one thing about this movie that doesn't work for me. Is the fact if you just get this one character that he's got this doll, he plays with this Aquaman doll, and he has a flashback where his stepdad is basically saying of like, men aren't born, they are made. You know, when I was younger, my dad gave me a box of matches and a knife. He dumped me in the woods, and he told me if I didn't get back home, I wasn't a man, basically. And then this kid comes back to reality. Oops, there goes gravity. Sorry, I had to do it. And basically, he's like, oh. Men are born, they're made. And then he talks to the Aquaman doll. He's like, we gotta get that Christmas tree. Then he just shrugs off into the snow and disappears for most of the movie. And then somehow he comes back with a huge Christmas tree, and he trades his Aquaman doll for it. Again, I feel like there were parts cut out there. I feel like that scene was possibly longer because it does feel very odd. But again, yeah, that's kind of like a side story that's going on here. But when you've got these main characters again, you've got Spencer, Charlie, Grace, and Donna. When you've got them all together and they're getting up into hijinks, and like, they don't want to be in this room full of kids, they want to get out, so they escape. And when they escape, they get into hijinks. Charlie does karaoke and gets caught because, again, he's an unattended minor. They all are. They shouldn't be out in the airport walking around on their own. It's not safe. I sound like such an old man there. Oh my God, my heart just broke. Oh God, old age just hit me hard then. Anyway, back to sort of being young again. So Joe does that. Spencer, he goes to the restaurant, orders a huge bill. Obviously can't pay for it. He does a legger. Grace, she has got her sort of high flyers, sort of like luxury posh people lounge. I don't know what they're called, VIP lounge. She basically goes through that. She's not meant to be there. And Donna, she steals one of them sort of carts. Airport carts, and they get into hijinks. They get caught by security. They get sent back down into the basement where all the other kids are, only to find that all the other kids, because they stayed and they were behaved, well, they weren't behaved, but they were stayed where they was. They didn't leave the room. They've all now been allowed to go to a nice, lovely Christmas lodge, and spend Christmas there. And these kids end up having to stay here. And that is kind of where you kind of them trying to escape and doing a lot of Home Alone, trying to run away from the guards, trying to basically, Spencer wants to get to his sister, in time for Christmas, because she feels like because they didn't manage to get home in time that Santa's going to forget her, and she wants Santa to turn up, and she wants a doll. It is very lovely. It's very well done, and as they go through doing all the hijinks, they eventually get there, and it's very sweet. And I like this film for that aspect, how it is very organic, how as they go through these series of events, they learn more about each other, and they all learn that all their parents are divorced, and you learn that Grace, her parents aren't divorced, but they're very rich and popular, famous, or whatever you want to call it, and they just don't have any time for Grace. She even says herself that she feels like her family don't want her around, that when she's there, they want to get rid of her, and that she only lives literally 20 minutes away from the airport, but she would rather spend time with other people her age in the airport than go home with the nanny, who the nanny didn't want to be there in the first place. Nanny wanted obviously the Christmas off, so she didn't want to be on her own. And like it's moments like this when the characters talk to each other, where it does feel very Breakfast Club-y. It was made by Paul Feig, and if you've ever seen any movies by Paul Feig, then you know he has a tendency to do a lot of films like this. For example, he did Freaks and Geeks, he did The Heat, he did Spy, he did Heavyweights. So if you've seen these movies, he is very good at doing things like this, having moments like this with characters. But yeah, I really enjoyed the story. Like again, it's not the best in the world. It's not sort of like Oscar worthy. Like it is a kids movie. It is a Christmas movie, but it's fun. It's enjoyable. And then you've got the character of what's his name? You got Lewis Black, who plays Oliver, who is basically the airport manager, and he's like the bad guy. But again, Lewis Black, he's also a comedian, so he has funny moments, and he has a lot of quips and one-liners and that sort of thing that keeps the fun going. Even me, I'm watching it on my own. There was never a moment where I was bored. There wasn't a moment where I wasn't engaged. Like I was generally interested, and it was fun to go back and to watch this film again. And I come back to it. Is this a movie that deserves to be forgotten? No, because it is a lot of fun. The presentation, it is very Breakfast Clubby, but it's a modern telling of sort of the Breakfast Club story, as well as it's got very much the feelings of Home Alone in it as well. You have the moments of heartfelt between the kids. You've got so much in this film that I really, really enjoyed, and that I feel like other people get the most out of. That then it comes back to the fact of, is this movie the best in the world? No, but is it a lot of fun? Yes. Is it a good Christmas movie? Yes. And overall, I just think it's not a film that should be forgotten. That is kind of my overall thoughts. It's got a star-studded cast. The kids are pretty good, and you can't say that a lot nowadays for a lot of movies with kids at the lead. Sometimes you watch them and you're like, I'd never try to judge child actors, because I just don't think that's fair, because again, they're only young, they haven't been in the business long, they are trying their best, and again, as they get older, their skills would improve. So I'd never tend to judge child actors on their acting skills in movies. But here you can tell that they all were pretty good actors. Like they were kids, yes, but there were moments where it's like, well, you can tell that they have a sort of what's what I'm looking for, aspiring future. You know, especially with all the other cast as well. You've got Rob Codroy, Rob Rickle. Again, Lewis Black, Mindy Kaling she was a restaurant hostess, but she stood out. You've got BJ Novak, again, he just had a small role as a desk attendant, but he stood out. You know, there was a lot of actors in this where it's like everybody stood out, and I just had a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it, and I feel like you will as well. If you ever get around to watching this, or if you haven't seen it, I feel you'll have a lot of fun, especially your kids will. It is generally a film for kids, but I feel like the adults will get fun out of it as well. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts, is generally give it a go if you haven't. Don't forget about it. Don't pass up on it. If you see it on the TV, that you get that rare sort of moment, then please do give it a watch, because it does deserve your attention. One thing I wasn't able to do with I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus is a bit of trivia, because as I mentioned in that review, no matter how much I tried, I couldn't find any sort of information on the production of that movie at all, only that it was shot in Utah, which, funny thing actually, I posted, after I watched I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus, I posted on Twitter saying that I wondered why so many movies, Christmas films, are shot in Utah. I would really like to go. And I had a few people comment on that tweet, basically saying, no, don't be fooled. You don't want to go there at Christmas. It is not what the movies make it out to be. And it really, really made me giggle. And other people were like, look, you want to go elsewhere. You want to go to like the Rocky Mountains. You want to go to, wait, I can't remember what it was now. I forgot the name, but there was another part of America, and the person was like, "Look, this is just better. Like, if you're looking for the pine trees, the snow, the little cute little towns and villages, and the people are really nice, you want to go there." Not to dog on Utah, like I've never been to America, I've never been there, but everybody was like, "Yeah, like, don't be fooled." So I found that kind of funny. But I managed to find some trivia for this film. Not a lot, but I managed to find some. So Tyler James Williams, who plays Charlie in this, or who is also the guy who plays Chris in Everybody Hates Chris, he recorded a song for the film titled Unaccompanied Minors, but it was only used in a television spot and not in the actual movie, which is rather interesting. Also, the late, great Terry Gear makes an unaccredited appearance in the film as Aunt Judy. She appeared in the film as a personal favour to director Paul Feig and accepted no payment for doing so. I didn't know she was in this film. And when she appeared, I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. I'll admit, and I'll put my hand up here, I watched Young Frankenstein at a very young age and had a crush on her. And I've had a crush on her ever since. And she was one of them actors that whenever she appeared in films, I just fell in love. And she recently passed away as recording this on October the 29th. So I didn't know she was in the movie, but it was a lovely treat. And then to sort of do my research and to see that she basically did this as a personal favor to the director, and she didn't want no payment for doing so, just makes her a bit more awesome. It was a small role, but it was a very fun role. And it was one of those, again, when you don't expect it and you see an actor that you do admire and you had a crush on at a young age, who's recently passed as well, it just hits a bit differently. So it was very lovely to see her. Anyway, so the guards in the hall, so you got Kevin McDonald, Bruce McCulloch, I can't pronounce the last name, and Mark McKinney, all used to be on the Canadian sketch comedy show The Kids in the Hall. I've never watched it. Well, tell a lie, I've seen some episodes of it, but the Doom Generation ladies, they have seen that show, and they did a whole episode on it. And then from that episode, I did watch a few episodes, and I thought it was hilarious. But if you want to hear more about that show, again, look at the Doom Generation. They did a whole episode on it. But it's funny that ever since they did that episode, and I saw a bit of sort of the Kids in the Hall TV show on YouTube, I now recognize these characters. I've realized how much, especially like movies from like the 80s, 90s, even like the early 2000s, how many films these guys appear in together. Because you don't notice it until you notice it, or if you didn't know, you wouldn't notice it. But now that I've noticed it, they are in a lot of movies together, and it's one of those where it's like, it's a lovely little Easter egg. Whereas, like, if you know, you know, if that makes sense. Maybe it does. I don't know. As for sort of the UK release, the film was renamed twice. The original trailer was titled Unaccompanied Minors. The second trailer and the film referred to it as Grounded, and the third trailer had the title as Grounded Unaccompanied Minors. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, because as I mentioned in introduction, it is a dodgy name. It's not a great name. Like, I know that's what they are, unaccompanied minors, but when you type into Google, it's just one of those where it's just like, ugh. You know what I mean? It's not a name that's like works for a film, really. Like, I think Grounded works better. Like, then again, when you say grounded, you could say grounded as in being grounded, they're in trouble, or grounded as in they've been grounded because the plane's been grounded. But again, I don't blame them for changing the name in the UK twice, which is funny. But yeah, I feel like Grounded, or at least Grounded Unaccompanied Minors, sounds better. Sounds a lot better. I always remember it as just being Unaccompanied Minors. I don't remember it ever being advertised here as Grounded. But if that's what it says in the research, that must be true. Also, final bit of trivia. So 3 members of The Office from 2005 appear in this movie at different times, which I've already mentioned. But yeah, it is a good film. Apart from like sort of the bad name, the bad title, it is a good film. It's a fun little sort of Breakfast Club meets Christmas meets Home Alone sort of situation. But if you enjoy those sort of movies, or if you're just looking for a Christmas film to put on over the holidays, you can't go wrong with this one. It's funny, it's cheeky, it's silly, and the characters are great. The acting's pretty good, to be honest. The hijinks are fun. It's only, I think it's about 90 minutes long, so it's not a long film. About an hour and 30 minutes or so. So it's not one that's going to take all like a long time. I think generally you'll get through it, and because how the movie's paced out and the fun, even though it's half an hour long, you don't feel that at all. It goes by very quickly. It actually went by that quickly that I was just, oh, I thought this movie was longer, and I realized I've been sitting there for however long I was sitting there for. So you don't realize it goes by quite quickly. And yeah, I really did enjoy this film, and I think you guys will as well. I'm running out of things to say, so I'm just going to wrap it up and say thank you very much for joining me of talking about this movie. I am very tired because I've been really busy this winter season getting things ready for Christmas. So if I sound a bit not really as hyper and as excited as I would normally, that is as to why, because I've got a lot of recording and I've got a lot of thumbnails and things to plan and things to do. So just rest assured, I am still full of beans and full of energy and full of Christmas spirit. I'm just exhausted, and I'm going to take a big break now. So thank you very, very much for listening to me. Thank you very much for listening to my review of Unaccompanied Minors. Make sure that you follow me on Twitter at Nerdstalgic_pod. Make sure if you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah, let me know down in the comments your favorite Christmas movie. Have you seen this film? Have you not seen it? Again, let me know there. You can also leave a comment on on Spotify now. So if you go on Spotify, there'll be a comment section underneath this very episode. You can leave a comment there. I will see them and I can reply to them. Also, if you are on Spotify on your mobile phone, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and to give me a follow. So far, I've got 123 followers on Spotify as recording. It would be nice to get up to maybe like just having one extra follower, or have like 2 more, 125, maybe even 130. So if you're not following me on Spotify, you can follow me there. And yeah, so thank you very much for joining me. Next week is going to be a complete surprise because I have no idea what I'm going to be covering next week, because as of recording this now in November, I am currently running a poll over on Twitter to see what my final review is going to be before Christmas. I'm calling it my night before Christmas review, basically. The day before Santa arrives, what is going to be that review? And currently, it's been whittled down to Charlie Brown's Christmas, Gremlins, and Violent Night. They are currently in the semi-finals. When I last looked at it, Violent Night and Gremlins were winning. So going into the finals, those seem to be the last two. Obviously, when you listen to this now, that sort of poll will be over, but so far those are the ones that are in the league. So it's going to be interesting to see who wins, because it's been very close between them two for every sort of poll I have done. So I'm excited to see it be neck and neck, but you'll find out next week. I will find out very, very soon. But until then, thank you very much for listening. Merry Christmas, and I hope to see you next week.